An open letter to the Anti-Monarchists and Republicans of the United Kingdom. I've been pondering your arguments, and I believe I've managed to whittle down what you say into 3 key points, that being cost, power, and image. So, let's start from the top. I am so often told about the immense cost of having a royal family. Indeed, when we compare the struggles of those on the breadline, those in refugee camps, those at the bottom of society to Liz and her corgis, it seems a monumental waste. But let's try and assess how accurate that is. Well, the royals receive about £40 million each year from the government, which might seem like a lot, but let's be realistic. How much is that per person? About 65p per year. Still, maybe you don't like that. Maybe you don't think the hereditary head of state should have any of your money. Well, I think we need a history lesson. King George III was a bit of an odd bloke, and he was no fool. Well, for some of his life anyway. When he was in need of money, he struck a deal with Parliament. In exchange for a yearly salary, the monarch would rent out all their royal land and give the profit to the government. Each monarch has continued this deal to this day, so let's do some maths. The cost is around 40 million, but the monarch gives Parliament a huge 200 million in profits. 200 take 40 is 160, meaning the deal between Parliament and the royal family saves the country 160 million each year. Or, in realistic terms, it means your taxes are about £2.50 less than if we abolished the royals. So make sure you enjoy your royal rebate before you talk about the costs. And this doesn't even dig into the gold mine of tourism. Billions are made each year because families from around the world flock to see real castles with real guards used by real monarchs. Again, with the calculations, the recent royal wedding cost around £20 million, but through tourism, it's estimated it generated almost £1 billion. You can do the sums. Now, power. Yes, there is no escaping the fact that the Queen does have power. God invests power in the monarch, and the monarch invests its power in the Parliament, so a theocracy? Maybe. Tangents aside, the Queen does have some power. She can dissolve Parliament, go to war, give royal assent to legislation, give royal pardons, create peerages, appoint and reprove ministers, a lot of different and often quite technical things. And although this does seem like a lot, let's think critically. The monarch won't do anything until it's gotten through Parliament. Royal assent, as I believe I mentioned, is just the final formality of bills being passed, and all legislation goes through this stage. It has no negative consequences. She's passed the cutting of her own budget in the past, so there is no threat of her overthrowing what we call the mother of all parliaments. Indeed, the last time there was a disagreement between the two was in the decapitation days of the 1600s, when we had a bloody civil war over it. In fact, the Commonwealth of Cromwell that replaced it was just as bad, if not worse, than the monarchy. What he did to the Irish between 1649 and 1650 is rightly described as genocidal. So yes, the monarch doesn't have real power to overthrow us all, and the alternative to it is not guaranteed to be any better. So the final point, image. Well, what is an image? Who decides what someone's image is? I'm told all the time by people that the monarch, the Queen, the royals, they all have a terrible image. They all have an image of slavery, of dictatorship and oppression. Well, I'm sorry to break the illusion here, but the current royals they're not slavers, they're not dictators, and they're not oppressors. Whilst the monarchs of the past have done bad things, that's not to say the current family are the same. While we might look back and say how horrible Henry VIII might have been, that's not a comment on Elizabeth II. Imagine how horrified you would be if your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was a murderer or a thief, only for you to be accused of the same things, simply by justification of relation. Indeed, there are far too many people who believe that crime is hereditary, that for some reason we should pay for the mistakes of the past. Not our past, the past. Well, what bullshit line of reasoning must you pursue to reach that conclusion? I am not guilty of my father's crimes. Neither are you, nor is the royal family. But returning to the point in question, image is a very subjective concept. I would argue that the royals have a different image, one of benevolence or kindness, but that's just my opinion on the matter.